I never thought I'd be the kind of man to end up like this, staring at my phone in the middle of the night, heart pounding as I reread the message that shattered everything. Bro, I don't know how to tell you this, but you need to see it for yourself. She's at Redwood Lounge. Not alone. My grip tightened around the phone. Redwood Lounge. I knew that place. It used to be ours, back when we were still happy, still in sync. Before things changed. Before she started pulling away. I almost ignored the message, convincing myself it had to be a misunderstanding. Or maybe even a joke. But something deep inside wouldn't let me. I grabbed my keys and drove through the empty streets, my mind racing with memories, her sudden distance, the hushed phone calls, the late nights that never had real explanations. I had doubted myself before. Thought maybe I was being paranoid. But now? Now I had proof. The moment I stepped inside the lounge, I saw her, Samantha, my wife. The woman I had built my life around. And there she was, sitting at the bar, laughing. Not just laughing, leaning in close, touching another man's arm. Some guy with a confident smirk, the kind that said, "I've already won." They weren't even trying to hide it. My body felt numb, but my mind burned. I watched as she tilted her head back, laughing at something he said, her fingers grazing his chest in a way she hadn't touched me in months. I could have walked up to them, confronted her, made a scene. But I didn't. Instead, I took out my phone and snapped a picture. Not for revenge. Not to use against her. Just to remember the exact moment everything changed. I left without saying a word. Before she could see me. Before she had a chance to lie. The next morning, I sat at the dining table, staring at the untouched coffee in front of me, waiting for her to walk in like nothing had happened. When she finally did, she barely looked at me. "Morning," she muttered, pouring herself coffee like it was just another day. I slid my phone across the table. Her own phone buzzed as she reached for her cup. She glanced at it, sighed, then lazily looked at my screen. The color drained from her face. But she didn't look guilty. Or ashamed. Just annoyed. "You were spying on me?" she asked flatly. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Spying? That's what we're calling it?" My voice was steadier than I felt. "I just saw for myself what you've already decided behind my back." She sighed dramatically, rolling her eyes. "You're being so dramatic." Her audacity nearly made me lose it. "I caught you with another man, Sam. You were all over him. And you're acting like I'm the problem?" She crossed her arms, her expression almost bored. "You don't own me, Nathan." I froze. The way she said it, like I was some possessive, overbearing husband, like I was the one in the wrong. "I never said I did," I said quietly. "But I thought we had respect. I thought we had something real." She exhaled, shaking her head as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "You're overreacting," she muttered, grabbing her purse. She wasn't denying it. She wasn't apologizing. She was just done with the conversation. I followed her to the door, my hands trembling with suppressed rage. "What do you expect me to do, Sam?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She turned, arching a brow. "I don't know. Be a man about it." Her lips curled into a cruel smirk. Then she walked out. Like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at the empty space she left behind. And that's when it hit me, she wanted me to chase her. She expected the anger, the fighting, the begging. She wanted the drama. Because as long as I was fighting for her, she was winning. But what happens when the game stops? When there's no fight left? I took a deep breath and made my decision. She wanted me to chase her. Instead, I was going to let her feel my absence. And that would be the beginning of her regret. Here's your rewritten version with a natural, engaging flow. I took my time. Finished my coffee. Sat there, staring at the empty seat across from me, letting the weight of everything sink in, the betrayal, the humiliation, the sheer disrespect. Then, I got up, grabbed my laptop, and started making plans. First, I secured my finances. We had a joint account, well, mostly joint. My paycheck had been the one filling it for years. She had her own income, sure, but we both knew who really carried the weight. Not anymore. I transferred my money into my personal account, leaving just enough so she wouldn't notice right away. I didn't want to set off alarms. Not yet. Next, I logged into all the bills, rent, utilities, credit cards. I removed myself from anything tied to her. If she wanted independence, she was about to get it in the hardest way possible. Then, I sorted out the lease. The apartment was in both our names, but I was the one who had always paid the rent. That was about to change. I called the landlord and gave my notice. "You're breaking the lease early?" Asterisk, she asked, surprised. "Yes, asterisk," I said simply. Asterisk, "Just let me know the penalties. I'll cover my half." Asterisk. I wasn't going to leave her with legal trouble, that wasn't the point. But I was going to make sure she felt my absence. Then, I went through the apartment, packing up only what mattered, my clothes, my documents, the few sentimental things I actually cared about. The rest? She could have it. By the time I was done, it was late evening. She still hadn't called. Still hadn't texted. She thought I was going to react, to explode, to fight. She had no idea that, as of tonight, she had already lost me. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in months. I moved through my routine calmly, brushing my teeth, getting dressed, making breakfast. But this time, I didn't make an extra cup of coffee. I didn't leave a note. I wasn't waiting for her to come back. I had already booked a temporary place, a small furnished apartment across town. Nothing fancy, just a quiet space where I could breathe. I was gone before she even woke up. And I turned off my phone. I wanted to see how long it would take before she noticed. By noon, I turned it back on. 6 missed calls. A handful of texts. At first, her messages were casual, like she was just checking in, wondering where I was. One even had a pet name, like nothing had happened. I let them sit there, unread. I wasn't giving her the panic she wanted. I wanted her to stew in it. That evening, a voicemail came through. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. The first few seconds were just background noise. Then, her voice, annoyed, impatient. "Nathan, seriously? Are you going to ignore me all day?" Asterisk, a sharp exhale. Asterisk, "I don't know what kind of tantrum you're throwing, but you need to stop acting weird. Call me back." Asterisk. I laughed. A tantrum? That's how she saw it? Not as a consequence of her actions. Not as me reclaiming my dignity. Just a childish outburst. She still thought I was playing the game. She still thought I'd come running back. She still thought she mattered. I deleted the voicemail. The next morning? No new calls. By noon, a few more messages. She was getting impatient. By the second day, the tone shifted. No more casual texts. No more jokes. She was demanding answers. Asking if I had moved out. Accusing me of being dramatic. By the third day, frustration crept in. She wasn't asking where I was anymore, she was asking why I was doing this. But she still didn't get it. She still thought it was temporary. By the fourth day, the cracks started showing. Her messages weren't just frustrated anymore. They were uncertain. She told me to stop ignoring her. Said this was ridiculous. And then, in the same breath, she asked if we could talk. She was starting to realize she might have miscalculated. By the fifth day, desperation set in. Her messages came in rapid succession. She needed to talk. She needed to understand. She didn't know what was happening. And there it was, regret, She had spent days thinking I would come crawling back, trying to prove myself, fighting for my place in her life. But now? Now she was realizing I was really gone. That's when the call started again. I didn't answer. I let her feel it. Let her understand what it meant to lose me. For so long, she believed I would always be there. Now she was realizing what it meant when I wasn't. And that was only the beginning of her downfall. At first, she enjoyed it, the space, the freedom, the thrill of doing whatever she wanted without worrying about me waiting at home. I imagined her laughing at my silence, rolling her eyes at my refusal to engage. She probably told herself I'd be back, that I was just sulking, playing hard to get, trying to punish her. She convinced herself that I needed her more than she needed me. That I would crack first. That I would come crawling back. But as the days stretched into a week, then 2, reality started creeping in. And that's when she finally understood something she had never considered before. I wasn't coming back. At first, she didn't notice much. The only real change was the silence, no texts, no calls, no arguments, no presence at all. Then, the little inconveniences started piling up. The fridge? Emptier than usual. I had always been the one to do the groceries, to restock the essentials. Now, when she reached for something, she found only empty shelves. The laundry? Piling up. I had never done all of it, but I always took care of my own, and sometimes hers, too. Without me, the pile grew. The bills? That's what hit first. She had never really paid attention to them. Sure, she had her own money, but I was the one who handled everything. When the first overdue notice arrived, she probably thought it was a mistake. Then came the second. And the third. It wasn't until the internet got cut off that she finally panicked. By then, 2 weeks had passed. And her messages? They had changed. She wasn't telling me to stop being dramatic anymore. Now, she was asking when I'd be back. Not if, when. She had spent so much time convincing herself that I would always be there, solid, permanent, reliable. She never once considered what would happen if I simply let go. And then? The crack spread even further. The relationship she had thrown our marriage away for, the man she thought was so exciting, so different, was already losing its shine. I had seen it coming even before I caught her. She thought he was a thrill, a spark, something new, but the problem with chasing excitement? It never lasts. She was used to stability. Used to me, used to the comfort I had given her without her even realizing it. And now? Now she was trying to replace that comfort with someone who had never promised to give it to her in the first place. He started pulling away. Canceling plans. Replying later and later. At first, she didn't understand why. She had expected him to be everything I wasn't, because in her mind, the grass is always greener, right? But now? Now she was alone, more alone than she ever thought she'd be. And when a month had passed, she finally did the one thing I had been expecting from the start. She showed up. I hadn't moved far, just enough to disappear from her daily life, but not so far that she couldn't find me. And now, here she was. Standing at my door. I took a deep breath. Let the games begin. When she got desperate enough, and she had, there was a knock at my door one evening. Soft at first, then a little firmer. I let her wait, let her stand outside, stewing in her own nerves. Then, finally, I opened the door. There she was. Her hair wasn't as perfectly styled as usual, and there was a tension in her face I had never seen before. A stiffness in her shoulders. For the first time in our entire relationship, she looked unsure. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out right away. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, waiting. She cleared her throat. Can we talk? I didn't respond immediately, just studied her. I could see it now. The regret behind her eyes. The realization that the life she had stepped into wasn't nearly as exciting as she had expected. That I wasn't there to fix things. That the man she had betrayed me for had never been a replacement, just a distraction. That she had gambled everything away for nothing. Talk about what? I finally said. Her lips parted, then pressed together again. For a moment, I thought she would break, spill out some long-winded apology, tell me she made a mistake. But she didn't. She wasn't ready to admit it yet. Not fully. Instead, she sighed. You really just left? I shrugged. I thought that's what you wanted. She looked away, exhaling sharply. I didn't think you'd actually. She cut herself off, shaking her head. Never mind. I waited, but she didn't finish the thought. She had nothing to say. Nothing she could say. Because she had already lost. She just hadn't fully processed it yet. She thought if she showed up, I would crack. That I would see her, hear her voice, and something inside me would need to fix things. She still thought she had that power over me. She didn't. And she knew it now. I let the silence stretch, just long enough to make her uncomfortable. Then, finally, I spoke. You should go. Her head snapped up. What? I think we're done here. Her lips parted slightly, a flicker of shock crossing her face. She had come here expecting control, expecting something, and instead, she was getting nothing. Just the same emptiness she had left me with. For the first time in weeks, I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. Not arrogance. Not defiance. Regret. Real, crushing regret. And it was too late. I stepped back and closed the door. And for the first time, I felt free. She didn't leave right away. I stood on the other side of the door, listening, waiting. At first, nothing. Then a faint shuffle. A slow exhale. A hesitation. I imagined her standing there, staring at the closed door, trying to piece together how things had slipped out of her hands. For the first time, she wasn't the one walking away. She had lost control. And that realization probably felt like poison in her veins. Finally, after what felt like forever, I heard her footsteps fade down the hall. The soft click of her heels against the floor. The reluctant sound of her leaving. And just like that, she was gone again. But this time, it was different. This time, I was the one who had left her behind. I expected her to stay quiet after that. Maybe it was foolish of me to think that one failed attempt would be enough to stop her. Because a week later, she tried again. The text started slow. Short messages that didn't demand anything. Hopeful, maybe. Careful. Hey. I ignored it. A few hours later. How have you been? I let it sit. Unread. 2 days later, she finally tried something real. I know I messed up. Can we just talk? Please. That last word, please, stood out the most. Not because I believed it was genuine, but because I knew she had never expected to say it to me. I could picture it, her sitting on her bed, staring at her phone, debating whether she should even send it. Wrestling with the unfamiliar feeling of being the one on the other side of the silence. She had spent so long expecting me to fight for her. To chase her. Now she was the one waiting. And I wasn't answering. A few more days passed before she finally escalated. A call. I stared at my phone, watching her name appear on the screen. I didn't move to pick it up. It rang. And rang. And rang. Then silence. A minute later, a voicemail notification popped up. I waited a few hours before listening to it. Her voice was different this time. Not angry. Not cold. Just, lost. Nathan, I don't even know what to say. A long pause. I miss you, okay? I miss us. I didn't realize how much until now. Another hesitation. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but a sigh. I don't know. I just wanted to talk. For a second, I almost thought she was going to start crying. But she didn't. Instead, she ended it with a whisper. Call me back. The message ended. I sat there, phone in hand, expression unreadable. For a brief second, I actually felt something. Not hope. Not sadness. Just the faintest, fleeting echo of what could have been. But it was gone before I could even grasp it. Because I knew better. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about realizing she had made a mistake. This was about regret. About fear. About knowing she had lost something she thought she could replace, only to find that she couldn't. She wanted me to come back. Not because she had changed. But because she missed what I had given her. And I wasn't that man anymore. She didn't stop trying. A few days later, I ran into a mutual friend, someone who had been close to both of us before everything fell apart. I knew right away that they had seen her recently. They gave me a strange look, hesitated, then finally said, "She's not doing great." I shrugged. "That's not my problem." "I know," they said quickly. I think she regrets it. All of it." I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. Regret doesn't mean anything if you only feel it when it's too late. They didn't argue. They knew I was right. And I think, deep down, she knew it too. Another call. Another voicemail. And still, I didn't answer. This time, she was more desperate. "I just don't understand, Nathan." Her voice was shaky, edged with frustration. "How can you just walk away like this? After everything?" I could hear the emotion bubbling beneath her words, the anger, the disbelief. She still didn't understand. She still thought I owed her something, a chance, an explanation, closure. But she had made the choice to walk away from me long before I ever returned the favor. She had gambled everything, fully expecting that I would be there, waiting for her to come back. Now, she was standing in the wreckage of her decisions, looking around, realizing there was no way to fix what she had broken. And she hated it. She hated that I wasn't playing my part. That I wasn't letting her rewrite the ending. That I wasn't giving her the chance to win me back. So I didn't respond. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I had already said everything the night I walked away. And she had ignored it. Now, she would have to live with the silence. Because that silence, that was my answer. The silence drove her mad. I could feel it in the way her messages became more erratic, more emotional, more raw. She had started with arrogance. Then confusion. Then anger. Now she was unraveling. I ignored every call, every text. Each one was another desperate attempt to claw her way back into my life, to pull me into an argument, to force a reaction. She didn't want an apology, she wanted control. But I had taken that away from her. And without it, she was falling apart. 2 months. That's how long it took for her to truly break. At first, she tried to play it cool. She went out with friends, plastered on a smile, posted pictures like nothing had changed, like she had won, like she had moved on. But people talk. And I started hearing things. She wasn't doing as well as she wanted everyone to believe. Her finances were a mess. She had underestimated how much I had carried us financially, how much of our life had depended on my stability. She wasn't going out as much. She wasn't keeping up appearances. And worst of all, the man she had thrown everything away for had already disappeared. He had never wanted more than a thrill. And now that the excitement was gone, so was he. She had gambled everything for him. And she had lost. Then came the night I knew she had hit rock bottom. I had just gotten home from work, settling into the new life I had built, a life where I wasn't constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. A life where I could breathe again. Then, a knock at the door. I already knew who it was before I even stood up. For a second, I debated not answering. Letting her stand there. Wait. Just like before. But some part of me wanted to see her face one last time. So I opened the door. And there she was. She looked nothing like the woman who had once stood in front of me, so full of arrogance, so sure of herself. Her makeup was uneven, like she had done it in a rush. Her clothes were nice, but not put together the way she usually liked. Her hair was slightly messy, as if she had been running her hands through it too much. But it was her eyes that told me everything. They weren't hard anymore. They weren't full of pride. They were empty. She had spent so much time pretending she was fine, convincing herself she had made the right decision. Now, she knew the truth. She had destroyed something she could never get back. She swallowed hard, shifting on her feet. Can I come in? No. The word left my mouth before I could even think about it. She blinked, as if she hadn't expected that. Like she still thought she could walk back into my life with just a conversation. She forced a small smile. Come on, Nathan. Just for a minute. I shook my head. There's nothing left to say. Her smile faltered. Her mask cracked. I miss you, she whispered. I miss us. There it was. The confession she had been holding back. The regret that had been eating her alive. If she had said those words months ago, maybe they would have mattered. Maybe I would have let them in. But now? Now, they were just empty words. I leaned against the doorframe, studying her, letting the silence stretch between us. She was waiting for me to give in, to let her back in, to give her the satisfaction of knowing she still mattered. Instead, I sighed. I don't think you miss me. Her brows furrowed. What? I shook my head. I think you miss what I gave you. The security. The stability. The certainty that no matter what you did, would always be there. Her mouth opened slightly, like she wanted to argue. But she didn't. Because she knew I was right. She had never missed me. She had missed the comfort of having me. And now that it was gone, she was lost. She let out a shaky breath. Can't we at least? No. I didn't let her finish. Because there was no at least. No second chance. No fixing what she had broken. Her eyes shimmered, just for a second. Then, finally, she nodded. She took a step back, swallowing hard, gripping the strap of her purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Then she turned and walked away. And this time, I didn't watch her go. I just closed the door. And I didn't look back.